Over the past 2 years, it seems the viewership for the Helluva Boss series has been on a slow decline, which I'd like to discuss in this video. With every new episode of Helluva Boss, it feels like it builds greater divide within the community. Some people are clearly wanting the best for the show, but there's an increasing number of people who just want to watch it all burn for no particular reason. After making my hopes for future episodes known in a previous video, I felt I had at least some responsibility to throw my 2 cents into the mix and clarify some of my earlier positions. Every time I want to engage with the show, I feel like I'm met with the same glaring issues that somehow manifest from episode to episode, almost like there's not even a hint of reciprocation to the continuous feedback they've received. Don't get me wrong, I do really enjoy them still, but it goes without saying it just doesn't hit the same as it used to. One of the best ways I think I can demonstrate some of the problems people are having with the show is by drawing a comparison between Helluva Boss and Smiling Friends. They both follow the same kind of initial premise and structure, however Charlie and Pim don't deviate from being Smiling Friends because they're going out and helping people along the series. It uses this simple premise to effectively build its situations, characters, and humor, whereas Helluva Boss completely deviates from the whole assassination business, turning it into some hyper-fixated romance between Blitzo and Stolas, without expanding on anything related to the business. It's constantly adding new main stage characters they're not finding the time to properly expand upon. They also ended up deviating further from this whole idea again recently by making the initial pilot non-canon, which was confirmed in a recent panel hosted at Anime Pasadena. As a thread made by Vivzi has shown, Season 2 is scripted around the time of Season 1. This is good since obviously the story fits sequentially. However, the obvious issue is that as episodes come out, issues are emerging, and the team can see the issues but can't do anything about it. Similarly, Vivzi discussed how some of the criticisms against the show, such as lack of Millie, will get solved in future episodes. However, it's going to basically create another issue of whenever that time does eventually arrive, it'll most likely not be enough for the audience. The existing scenes we've had so far will also fall into harsher criticism, especially if viewers deem it to be irrelevant or just unproductive, which I've found there's been no shortage of this season. Season 2 so far has been a mixed bag of locations, characters, and stories, which gives some of the other characters some much needed time in the spotlight, and while it is appreciated, it hasn't all been smooth sailing for both the story and Vivzi herself. With episode 1 it gave us a further look into Stolas and Blitz's childhood, episode 2 gave us some more development to Stolas and Octavia, with some of the conflict going on there, and episode 3 kind of flew off in its own direction, giving us more context into Moxie's past, creating quite a lot of new questions that were left unanswered. With every new episode that's released so far, there's always been a big discussion surrounding it after. I feel like more recently it's been a lot more noticeable and people were making more directly targeted criticism instead of just trying to shout down whoever liked the show, not providing any reasons as to why they themselves don't like it. Even if fans and critics are being more vocal this time around, I personally think it's a good thing, especially since they're being more constructive about it than they have been in the past. Unfortunately, public perception of the series has also managed to link in with Vivzi herself. Every time there's drama around Vivzi, it affects the discourse surrounding the show. Whenever there's drama surrounding the show, vivziepop will be dragged into it or vice versa. If there's something happening surrounding her, the show will be brought up negatively to try and pile on whatever existing mess has been created. It's unfortunate it's gotten to this point, but it probably would have been greatly avoided if she had avoided discussing certain topics. Regardless if she's in the right or not, bringing in so much attention was never going to end positively for her in the long run. Initially, episodes were getting around 40 million views, which has now fallen down to around 15 million. This is by no means a small viewership, but in the grand scheme, losing over half of the initial viewer base is crazy. Going forward, I think the discourse surrounding the shows will be a lot better due to the viewership getting smaller and now less mainstream, making everything around it more enjoyable. Moving into the issues with the actual show itself, the first and probably most common problem is the story. I personally feel like losing the assassination element of the show really stopped everything being held together. It was such a good way to introduce new characters and locations, providing an interesting new perspective on wherever the gang would head to. It's not unheard of to deviate from a pilot, but its tone changed pretty dramatically, which could have contributed majorly to not being able to maintain its viewership. What got people initially invested in the show is basically completely absent in a lot of these later episodes. Another one of the key issues with the show currently is that it's opening up so many different conflicts between so many different characters, and then just leaving them completely unresolved, making the story a bit incoherent and just a villain of the week type deal. Many episodes in Season 1 introduced new villains, and Season 2 follows this trend, and it's at the point where it's too crowded. Like with Stryker being introduced, it took 2 years for him to reappear, and by the time he did, many fans said he didn't feel like the same character anymore, or that he was neutered compared to his previous appearance. The show really didn't need to add this many villains, there was plenty to build off of in the first season, instead of adding a bunch more that they're not going to have time to properly explain, or that are particularly worth even paying attention to in the first place. They recently stated that they moved Stolas' role from being a villain to a love interest for Blitzo, and while I don't really mind it personally, I think the villain role would have suited him much better. I think they could still move him into that role, which would be a pretty cool twist for this story, but I don't know how likely that would be or how well it could be pulled off. Songs take up a lot of screen time that could be spent on the characters. Even if individually they aren't that long, across so many episodes among 2 seasons, it really does add up. They can't give enough background or exposition to really warrant the amount of them that get thrown in. Don't get me me wrong, I do enjoy them and they're great, but it seems to be at the detriment of the rest of the story being explained in further detail. Musicals and songs can work well alongside the episodes, but having them being uploaded nearly a month after the release, if they're even uploaded at all, isn't great. And even when they are uploading them, there's no changes made to them. Editing is pretty inconsistent as well. In the Clown Bitch upload, the sound effects from the crowd are still there, whereas in Juggling is Cool, they were specifically taken out. It'd be nice to just have the full version without the cuts to have it included in the show. Another issue occurring quite a lot is that fan re-uploads are currently outpacing the official page by 3 weeks, adding in subtitles on screen and posting on the day of the episode's release. It's also a bit of a nitpick, but the end screen has frame glitches and it's been like that for every upload. All it would take is one person to watch the end segment to notice it, but no one has. I wanted to get another perspective on Helluva Boss's current state from someone more knowledgeable in the series as a whole, so I invited Elamau to share his thoughts, which I'll play for you now. All his links will be down in the description below.
One point I've seen brought up repeatedly is that the show has changed focus, and frankly I'd agree. Vivzie has talked about the development of the show from pilot to full series, and even from just the average viewer standpoint, it's clear there's been a bit of a switch. Vivzie has gone on the record to confirm this through tweets and live streams. If you compare the show we have now to the original pitch bible, there's quite a difference. Vivzie said that the core episode ideas she had from the start went on to become their own episodes, being Lululand, Truth Seekers and Harvest Moon Festival. All 3 of these episodes are extremely strong and quite popular among the fanbase, so it looks like the other episodes were stitched to these ones. What's funny is that the episodes that tend to follow the core premise of the show tend to be reviewed the worst or are quite forgettable. Another thing Viv has mentioned is that Stolas was originally a villain, before he was changed to instead be a love interest for Blitz. Personally, I think Stolas should have been kept as a villain. At least in my eyes, it would have been far more appealing to see Stolas go from a serious villain to an actual love interest. Instead, what we got in the final show was a sad, unrequited love situation, where Blitz refuses to get with Stolas for no discernible reason, and Stolas is perpetually sad. I think these 2 points tie together into why some people fell out of love with the show. It's changed course, and although some of the romance, melodrama-centered episodes are fantastic and among the best rated, it's a far cry from the original plot that was envisioned back in 2019. I myself have witnessed a change in the fanbase and audience of the show as well. Older fans were attracted by the humour, world and characters. There used to be countless theory videos discussing the world building and plot points. Now most of these kinds of channels have quit, fell off, or moved to greener pastures. As a result, the vast majority of content created on the show is episode reviews or people discussing shipping. This is great for some, but for people like me who prefer content that steps outside the box, you're left wanting more. The lack of content has also diminished the series in the algorithm as well. When an episode releases, there'll be a surge of low effort clippable moments, re-uploads of the songs, and then reactions. This hype quickly fades and viewers are just waiting for the next episode to release, with viewer numbers in freefall. Older fans feel like the show has changed for the worse. It went from a wacky murder comedy in hell to a serious emotional show. If you're into the drama and relationships, then you'll love the newer episodes. Whereas if you came for that original premise, then you'll feel left out. It's a little hard to tell if the older episodes were rated so highly because people had the rose-tinted glasses on and were excited to see the newest indie show on the block. I feel like in 2024, if you want a wacky comedy show, then your best bet is The Amazing Digital Circus. Whereas if you want a show with drama, romance and the occasional song, then Helluva Boss is the show for you. So I can see why people argue that the show has declined. I don't think it's necessarily on a downward spiral, but I feel like it's lost some of the charm it had in its earlier episodes, and I hope it's something that can be rekindled in the future.
Overall, I do hope things improve for the show in the future. I really do like the show and see a lot of potential in what they're trying to do. I'm just concerned with how long this will all last if the viewership keeps declining at this rate. But that's all I wanted to cover in this video. If you did enjoy it, feel free to subscribe and let me know what you think about everything in the comments down below. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.